Good morning. I am Gnanapriya, faculty of botany from Shankar Medical Academy. So today we start a class with a questionnaire. Why the cell divides? What is the reason behind the cell has to undergo a division? When you talk why the cell needs to divide is, they have some purpose. Obviously, when a cell needs to divide, they need some purpose. And what is the purpose abruptly is being given here. Why the cell need to divide? The cell needs to divide for the purpose of a growth, when they want to grow or they want to repair, reproduce and to renew the damaged cells. For these reasons, the cell is undergoing a division. The purpose or the reason behind cell division is for the purpose of the growth, for purpose of reproduction, to repair the damaged cells, they undergo a division. But apart from this, the purpose, there are different types of division occurs inside the cell. That is mitosis, meiosis and amitosis. But the question is, why the cell divide? So these two are not the answer for the question. We have learned in this slide what are the types of cell division and what is the purpose behind the cell division, but we don't know what is the real justification behind the division of a cell. Now we'll see in detail what will be the reason behind the division of a cell. So there is a concept called as cell lineage. What do you mean by cell lineage? Cell lineage is nothing but it is a concept of genetical continuity. What do you mean by a genetical continuity? For example, you have a cell. From this cell, a new cell is going to arise. So what is all present in this cell? This cell we call it as a mother cell. The cell which has been formed newly, we call it as a daughter cell. So what is all present in this parent will be resemble on the daughter cell. So this process we call it as genetical continuity. What do you mean by genetical continuity? When the cell comes from the pre-existing cell, so it represents what all present in the mother cell that is obviously represented in the daughter cell. So a cell lineage is a doctrine or a concept of genetic continuity. So what does this actually infers? The cell arises from the pre-existing cell. So this concept was found by Rudolf Virchow, a scientist, in 1855. So what we were talking about now, first question is, why the cell divide? I have given you the purpose of the division. It can be for the growth or for to repair the cell or for reproduction. What are the ways the cell divide? Either by a process of mitosis, meiosis or amitosis. And then we went to a concept called a cell lineage. What do you mean by a cell lineage? A cell comes from the pre-existing cell. The process of this thing was said by the Rudolf Virchow. So what do you understand from this? The cell which is going to divide, we call it as a mother cell or we call them as a parent cell. From the cell, you get a new cell. We call this as a daughter cell. I hope you understand the two slides, why the cell divides. Under that, we saw two concepts. What are the types of division? What is the purpose of the division? And we talked about the extended cell theory of the Rudolf Virchow. And we'll go for the next still more in deeper version to find out in detail. There was a theory called as a kern-plasm theory in 1903 by a person called as Hertwig. There was a theory called what? Kern-plasm theory, and it was called as Hertwig in 1903. So please understand these lines. I'll just make sure that I read it once. During the life period of a cell, a constant ratio exists between the cytoplasm and the nuclear mass. So what does this line depict? What does this line depict? They say that there is some ratio between the nucleus and the cytoplasm. And this maintains the equilibrium between the cytoplasm and the nucleus. When you talk about a cell, we have a center part called nucleus, which is surrounded by the cytoplasm. So what do they say? There is some ratio exists between the nucleus and the cytoplasm that creates some equilibrium between them. When they're able to maintain this ratio, they are seems to be a normal cell. Can you understand? What does the kern-plasm theory states? The nucleus and the cytoplasm exist in a cell. When both of them are able to be in an equal level, when they both are able to exist in an equilibrium, we call the particular cell is in a stable state. But once the nucleus becomes less and the cytoplasm becomes big, that is a stage where the cell starts growing. So when you take a normal cell, how a cell looks, it will be like this. Suppose you took, this is a nucleus and I have drawn a diagram that is representing C is the cytoplasm. It is a normal cell and that cell is very small. Now this cell is undergoing a growth. This cell is undergoing a what? A process called as a growth. So that time the nucleus will be the same, but the cytoplasm becomes more. Now when you take the ratio of the cytoplasm and nucleus, it keeps varying and they don't have an equilibrium. Do you understood? When the cell is here the cell is able to express itself as an equilibrium ratio between the nucleus and the cytoplasm. So it is a normal cell. When the cell starts growing, the cytoplasm becomes big and the nucleus becomes less. So what do we understand from this? So when the cell division occurs, due to the disturbance of this karyoplasmic index ratio. What do you mean by karyoplasmic index ratio? What does these lines say? That is the equilibrium existing between the nucleus and the cytoplasm. When some changes occurs, when some disturbance occurs, when some problem exists, automatically the cell will undergo a process called as division. So we'll see better with the formula of the karyoplasmic index ratio. So we go for the karyoplasmic index ratio formula. So Ki is equal to Vn divided by Vc minus Vn. So Vn represents here the volume of the nucleus. Vc represents the volume of the cell. So Vc minus Vn represents the volume of the cytoplasm. So when you take about the karyoplasmic index ratio, the value is depicted as Vn divided by Vc minus Vn. Vn is the volume of nucleus, Vc is the volume of cell, and Vc minus Vn is the volume of the cytoplasm. So what do they say? When the karyoplasmic index is inversely proportional to the volume of the cytoplasm or the volume of the cell. See, for example, when a cell is very small, the karyoplasmic index ratio will increase. What does the come to the previous slide? You will have a detailed idea now. You will get the picturization. So what did I explain here? When the cell is small, what did I give you the formula? The karyoplasmic index is inversely proportional to the volume of the cell. See, when the this is a small cell. In this small cell, the karyoplasmic index ratio is more, but the volume of the cell is very small. But when you take this cell, this is a large cell, bigger cell, where the karyoplasmic index ratio is becoming what? Decreases. Because the growth occurs, what happens? Nucleus and cytoplasm is not in the equilibrium. Is it clear for you all? What did I explain? I'll go still better. I'll give you a diagrammatic explanation again with a see, for example, this is a small cell and you have a nucleus here. And this is the bigger cell and you have a nucleus here. See, now you understood what they are saying is, for this cell called A, the karyoplasmic index increases because they have a equilibrium between what and what? Between the nucleus and the cytoplasm. But now what happens here? The cytoplasm starts growing. You could see that the cytoplasm starts growing here. So now the equilibrium between the nucleus and the cytoplasm is not so. It is not perfect. So what happens here? Here the karyoplasmic index will decrease. You are able to understand? Here the karyoplasmic index increases because they have a stature, they have a stability, they have an equilibrium between nucleus and cytoplasm. But here the cytoplasm becomes big, the nucleus becomes very small. So now what will be the condition occurs? What condition occurs here exactly is, the condition is the nucleus cannot control the cell. They cannot control the cell. What they cannot do? They cannot efficiently control the cell. That is the word. They cannot efficiently control the cell. But where is here in the cell A? What happens? The nucleus and the cytoplasm is in equilibrium. So the nucleus can control the cell efficiently. Can control the cell efficiently. But whereas when the cell starts growing, what happens exactly here? The cytoplasm becomes big. When the cytoplasm becomes big, the nucleus becomes very, very small. So it cannot control the entire cell. Now what happens is, the nucleus will give some instructions to undergo cell division. They give some instructions to undergo what? Cell division. So what do you understand now? When does the cell undergoes a cell division? When there is a change or when there is a disturbance in the karyoplasmic index ratio. So when there is a disturbance in the karyoplasmic index ratio, the cell will automatically undergoes a cell division. You're able to understand now? So what was the points we are studying till now? I just summarize out. Why does the cell divide? The cell divides only when the karyoplasmic index ratio has got some disturbance. So the division can be either mitosis, meiosis, or amitosis. And why does the cell wants to divide? Because they wants to do a process called growth. They want to do a process called reproduction. They want to do a repair mechanism in the damaged cell. For all these purposes, the cell is undergoing a division. To add up to this point, what has the Rudolf Virchow has said? All the cells are coming from the already existing cell. So he stated that the cell which is undergoing a division is called as a mother cell. The cell which is coming out newly is called as a daughter cell. And this daughter cell definitely have a resemblance of a parental character. So these were the points were summarized in the above slides. Is it clear? So we were talking about what are the types of division, what is the purpose of the division, what is the concept of cell lineage, and then we went to the kernplasm theory of Erdwig in 1903, and he gave the concept of karyoplasmic index ratio. With what did I explain about the karyoplasmic index ratio? When it is a normal cell, when it is a small cell, or when it is a stable cell, the karyoplasmic index ratio is higher, but the volume of the cytoplasm or the cell is lesser. So when the cell starts growing, the karyoplasmic index ratio starts decreasing. So what do you understand detailedly? The karyoplasmic index ratio is inversely proportional to the volume of the cell. So this was the point we have been clear of, and we'll see next what is given later. So apart from the karyoplasmic index ratio, karyoplasmic index ratio is also called in the terms of nucleocytoplasmic ratio. You can see these lines in the NCERT book in the lesson of cell division under the significance of mitosis. Till now, people will be thinking, why we are going to talk about karyoplasmic index ratio? We have never come across this term in the NCERT book. This karyoplasmic index ratio is none other than nucleocytoplasmic ratio, which you could see in your NCERT book in the lesson cell division in the process of significance of mitosis. So what they're about to say from all these lines, when nucleus and cytoplasm is in equilibrium, the cell is in the normal state. Once the cytoplasm becomes big and when the nucleus becomes very small, the nucleus cannot control efficiently the cytoplasm. So what happens then? When the nucleus cannot control, there won't be any metabolism. So automatically the cell undergoes a division. So this was the point I was saying you laid. Now we'll come for what is another more point is left is surface volume ratio of the cell. What do you mean by surface volume ratio of the cell? This also causes the cell division. When a cell starts growing, for example, now the cell has started growing. Growing means what? It is going to increase in its size. When it increases in the size, the volume also increases, but the surface starts decreasing. So once the surface starts decreasing, what happens? They don't have much energy or the surrounding to still grow better. So automatically the cell will undergo a division. So once again, I'm repeating the surface volume ratio of the cell. When the cell starts growing, the volume of the cell increases, the surface starts decreasing. So when the surface starts decreasing, what happens? At one point of time, the cells cannot grow because it don't have enough space. So cell starts, what happens? They prior to go to the process of division. So this is what they're given. So they undergo a DNA replication and they undergo cell growth. So this seems to be the vital process of a living organism. So nucleocytoplasmic ratio, this concept you have seen in the NCERT book of cell division under the concept of significance of mitosis. So it is followed by, now we'll talk about what are the cells they don't divide and what are the cells will actually divide. So what did I taught you till now? I'll give you just a brief description again. The questionnaire was why the cell divides. What was the answer given under that slide was there are 3 types of cell division and what is the purpose of the division. And next topic, we were talking about the cell lineage. What do you mean by a cell lineage? A cell always comes from the pre-existing cell. And I gave you, there are two reasons for cell division. What are the two reasons? One reason is karyoplasmic index ratio. The second reason is surface to volume ratio. What is the line saying about the karyoplasmic index ratio? When the nucleus and the cytoplasm is not in equilibrium, obviously the cell will undergo a division. That was the first point. What was the second answer I gave you? The surface volume ratio. As the cell starts growing, the volume increases, the surface starts diminishing. So due to the process of diminishing of the surface, again it instructs the nucleus to undergo a division. So what are the two answers for why the cell divide? One is karyoplasmic index ratio. The other answer is surface volume ratio. So by this, the topic, whatever the given questionnaire, the answer is given. Now we'll go in still detail to know which are the cells will actually divide, which are the cells will not divide. The cell which has undergone a maturity. What do you mean by the word maturity? Which are the cell which has undergone a maturity or they become old enough? They started producing a new cell. What do you mean by the matured cell? Which has undergone a process of aging. It is going to become a new cell. So during the matured cell, they start growing. When they grow, the surface volume ratio and the nucleocytoplasmic ratio will change. Because of the change, the division will occur. Can you understand? When a cell becomes matured, what do you mean by a matured? When the cell undergoes a sequence of events or a change due to a particular period of a long period of a time, they become a matured cell. In this matured cell, the phenomenon which takes place, we call it as a growth. When the growth occurs, what happens actually? The cell surface volume and nucleocytoplasmic ratio will change or it will get varied. Because of this variation, the cell will undergo a division. And this division, it will form a new cell called as what? Daughter cell. And this daughter cell definitely resembles its parents, and this represents the genetic continuity. Whatever I explained everything right now, I made it in a one flow chart to give you a clear picture of what I taught you exactly. What I say again, when it becomes a matured cell, they undergo a growth. When they undergo a growth, they will have a surface volume ratio difference and they have a karyoplasmic index ratio difference. Because of this change of variation, they undergo a division. This matured cell, we call it as a mother cell. They divide to produce a daughter cell, and this daughter cells will definitely resemble her parent, and that shows a condition called as cell lineage or genetic continuity. So this was the clear idea about what I taught you exactly till now. So, as I say, cell grow, I say there is a process called as cell growth. How does the growth exactly occurs? It exactly occurs because of a hormone, and that hormone we call it as a growth hormone, and this growth hormone is produced from the anterior of the pituitary gland. So what did I say you? I said when the cell becomes matured, it undergoes a growth. How does the growth occurs? The growth occurs because of a hormonal effect. What hormone exactly occurs there? Growth hormone, which comes from the location of the pituitary gland from the anterior part. And next, the special protein is also produced, and that protein we call it as a cyclin. And this makes a communication with the matured cell, and they create a chemical signaling so that the growth takes place. So as I said earlier, the matured cells will undergo a growth. When they want to undergo a growth, they require two chemicals. One we call it as hormone, the other one we call it as cyclin. The cyclins are nothing but a chemical signals. They communicate to the matured cells to undergo a process of growth. And as well as the hormones, they create an hormonal effect from the pituitary gland of the anterior part to produce a growth hormone. So because of these two things, the growth takes place. Once the growth occurs, what happens? The surface volume ratio change, karyoplasmic index ratio change. So the cell automatically undergoes what? The cell automatically undergoes a division. So what division a somatic cell undergoes? Mitosis. In mitosis, we have two chemicals. We call it as mitogen. The other one, we call it as mitotic poison. So what are the terminologies which I've used in the slides are very rare concepts which has got some ideas behind it. Mitogens are nothing but the compounds or chemicals which stimulate the process of mitosis. Example, cytokinin and steroids. So when these chemicals are more in the cell, the cell will undergo division. I'm saying what are the reasons? As I said earlier, how a growth takes place. To growth to occur, you have two things. One is a hormone, the other one is the cyclin. Now I'm talking, when does the division occur? When there is a process called as, when there is a chemical called as mitogen. What do you mean by a mitogen? A substance which induces mitosis, or the substance which stimulate mitosis. We call it as a mitogen. The chemical which is present, we call it as cytokinin. The other one is steroids. Because of this presence of these two chemicals, the mitosis takes place. And mitotic poison. What do you mean by mitotic poison? Exactly an opposite of this. The arresting of mitosis, or the halting of mitosis, or stopping of mitosis is due to the presence of a chemical called collagen. So what does this collagen do? They arrest the spindle fiber formation during the cell division. If there is no spindle fibers, the chromosomes will not move apart, so the cell division cannot occur. So mitotic poison is which hinders or which makes an obstacle or which halts the process of mitosis. So in this slide, we were talking about the initial slide. What are the things stimulates the growth? Hormone and cyclin. And the next slide, we were talking about what is mitogen and what is mitotic poison. So what is mitotic poison? It is a chemical or a substance which will arrest the process of cell division. So now we'll finish the entire concept with a question. What happens during the growth of the cell? If this the question is, what happens when a growth of the cell? So what was the options given here? The karyoplasmic ratio index decreases, or karyoplasmic index ratio increases, or karyoplasmic index ratio fluctuates, or karyoplasmic index remains constant. So what did we understand from the lecture which is being given earlier? We know that when a cell is normal with the nucleus and cytoplasm, where the karyoplasmic index ratio will increase. No, what was the formula I gave you? The karyoplasmic index ratio is inversely proportional to the volume of the cell. This was the answer. This is the right answer for this question. What happens when the cell grows? The volume of the cell increases. When the volume of the cell increases, what happens to the karyoplasmic index ratio? It will decrease. So answer is the karyoplasmic index will decreases. So once again, I'm explaining you back again. So what was the question here? What happens during the growth of the cell? When there is a growth of a cell, what exactly happens? So what was the example I gave you? What was the formula I gave you? The karyoplasmic index ratio is inversely proportional to the volume of the cell. That means what? When a growth takes place, the volume of the cell will, what it will do? It will increase. So it is inversely proportional. So karyoplasmic index will decrease. So based upon this relation, we give an answer, the karyoplasmic ratio of the index decreases. Again, I summarize all the points so make it very clear. When a cell becomes mature, it undergoes a growth. When it undergoes a growth, the surface volume ratio and the Ki value will also differs. When it differs, what happens? They instruct the cell to undergo a division. When a division occurs, they become a daughter cell, and the daughter cell resembles the parent cell. So this is what exactly happens and why the cell divides. Thank you for you people.